Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, City Current CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And we love talking about education. That's why we're honored to have with us LaKendra Butler, founder and executive director of Strive Collegiate Academy. How are you doing?
I'm good. It is Wednesday, so we have exciting times. We talk about culture on Wednesdays with the students, so just always a good day.
Well, there is a lot to unpack, and when you talk about culture, leadership, education, there's a lot of good you do. But let's start with a little backstory. So give us some context, especially with you being founder and executive director. Give us a little bit of history for Strive Collegiate Academy.
Awesome. Yeah, so Strive started in 2015. We started with just fifth grade. And so with the charter school model is typically a gradual increase of students. So we started fifth grade in 2015. And from there, we added a grade level each year, which is up to eighth grade. And so we are founded on leadership and literacy and trying to make sure that we are giving students those literacy skills that we know they need beyond us. So like reading, writing, speaking, thinking, listening, those are like core skills that when adults are no longer in their lives, they need those skills. So how do we make sure that we are building upon them and giving them that like really great practice at the middle school level? And then leadership is how do we allow students to start to own their own learning? For some odd reason in ninth grade, like parents say, oh, you got it. Not all of them, but a good majority of them, because it's high school. And so what are we doing within the 4 years, now 3 years that they're with Strive, to make sure that they're getting some of those like leadership skills, which are our values. So self-advocacy, how are we teaching students, like, how do you self-advocate for yourself? What are some things you need? If they don't have it, how do you create it? And so one story I always tell is when I was the principal at KIPP, and I work with KIPP in Dallas, a lot of students left colleges, not because they didn't have the academic abilities, right? It was because they didn't see people who looked like them or found any connections to them, so they end up leaving school. And so how do we teach them now at the middle school level to like start an art club? If they don't have it, you create it. And so self-advocating for those things and giving them those practices now. Hopefully in high school, they, hone on those skills and then they have perfected them and now they're in college. Secondly, teamwork. Those leadership skills of like, how do you, utilize your team? How do you build upon the people? Resilience, you're going to have hard struggles, right? And so how do we make sure that like, how do we learn through them? What are the things that we do? We have conflicts, right? This middle school is school, they're human, so there are conflicts. So we do a really good job of once you have a conflict, you come back together as two individuals and you have a conversation about it and you find a solution of how you're going to operate moving forward. That has been really strategic for just our student body and our staff members. And then integrity and virtue are the next values. I always say like you are your brand, right? Like what are you doing when no one is watching? You are leading by what you do, not necessarily what you always say. And then excellence is the last one. So just doing everything in excellence. What does it look like from the work you turn in to the speech you say in front of your peers, or even when you walk within the hallways, what does an excellent demeanor look like? And so just really making sure that like our values are embedded in everything we do, which is that leadership skill alignment.
So Strive is an acronym, right? Just like you listed off, and it's also striving for growth, striving for academic success, so all of that goes together when you look at Strive Collegiate Academy and the name and the acronym on the values. And so talk about some of the stats, give us an idea of number of students, talk about geographic pull, give us, kind of where they're coming from, give us a little bit of the stats that warm your heart.
Yeah, so we are serving the McGavock cluster. And in Nashville, the high schools that are in the area, that cluster is named after high school. So majority of our students are zoned for McGavock High School. So we serve, there's about 11 elementary schools and 4 additional middle schools that are in the area. And so we serve all of those elementary schools for the most part. Demographically, we are closer to a third. So like a third Black, a third white, a third Hispanic, and then we have some Asian students as well. And so a fairly diverse group of students that we're serving. And it ranges the gamut of like, we are open enrollment. So we serve students with disabilities. We serve English language learners. We serve students who are academically strong. We serve students who are in the middle, as we would say. And so not a student we would turn away. And so just try to make sure that we are meeting students where they are and serving them to the utmost. And so that's kind of the demographics, like student-wise, geographically, and then racially.
Talk about what it means to be a charter school, because I think for many, you hear the term and you kind of think you know a little bit, but not necessarily. So talk about what it means to be a charter school.
Yeah, so a charter school is a public school. We are a public school option that are in Nashville specifically are approved by the Metro School District, who then allows us to serve the students in the Metro Nashville area. And so we have a charter per se on the school end. There's also a not-for-profit where we are considered that in, I guess, the paperwork, so all of that. But we're a school, and so we have to abide by all of the public school expectations. So our students take the TCAP TN Ready state test. Our funding is connected to the student attendance, like every other public school student in the state and across the country for the most part. We're still mandated to serve students with disabilities by the federal guidelines, and the same thing with English language learners. And so everything that a district school, a public school, that people have in their minds would have to do, charter schools are mandated to do the same as well. We're chartered, obviously not a part of the district per se, but wasn't created by the district per se. And so they approve us as an option for families. And then ideally we're a charter school because we're able to apply separately from the district created schools.
Carry that into then the freedom and the flexibility to do things like extended days, extended years, building out, like you said, the leadership, the organizational skills. Like you can then do some innovations that allow you to really pour into the students in some different ways and meet them where they are to help them grow. So talk about some of those different aspects that make Strive Collegiate Academy very different.
Yeah. So the word we use a lot of times is autonomy. So just having the autonomy to adjust as needed. And so I would say we have a budget based off of, our student numbers. And so we then have to create a school model based off of what we have. And so we provide transportation to students. We are obviously in a leased space. And so utilizing that same funding for that is what we're doing. And then we honestly maximize the rest of that in serving students. And so I will say, like, as a charter, our team is smaller. But with that, you also have a smaller amount of students a lot of times. And so you have the ability to support students individually because it's a smaller school. That's not the case for all charter schools. I'll speak for Strive in particular. And so with that, I honestly can't say this is a charter school thing, but I am really adamant about like families and making sure that like families know that like this is a partnership. And so we're here to support them and their child. And so with that, I'm very involved with the families to make sure that students are, served well, but also there's expectations that they may have at home, I reiterate here. And so being able to like stop and have those conversations and stay longer to do that, those are things that like I do as a leader, and I don't want to speak that that's the case at every charter school. But I know every single kid, and I'm like, you know what? You can't get it together during an hour of ELA class. We can stay an hour together after school. And so those are sacrifices that I make that are not necessarily connected to a school model, but just like what I believe is important for students to see that that's a value, and families to know that like I'm willing to do that so that kids can understand the importance of their education.
Give us a couple of things that stand out to you as whether they're culture builders, specific things like that you're doing to support the students, but that are creating success. So when you look at the success you're having and, you know, how you're able to create that, what are some of those drivers?
Yeah. So our first class of fifth graders are freshmen in college, and I'm so excited about that. And so just to know that that founding class is doing well. And so I think that's what I look at as success, right? Not necessarily, and I tell teachers all the time, we may not see our hard work while they're here, but the idea is like, look to see, and of course, in partnership with families, look to see students who have left here, what does that look like? And I'll give a story really quick. I have a student who, while she was at Strive, when she came to Strive, there was conversations that she struggled behaviorally, and so therefore her academics struggled. When she got here, there was times where like no one could get through to her, and she would just like shut down, say nothing. Even within the 4 years she was here, she said probably, I don't know, 10 words a day, like would not speak. And so she ended up moving to another county, and conversations that we had with her was like, the opportunities that we sit down, you just struggled academically, or you struggled like physically with another, like we sat and had a conversation about like, this is not what life looks like. You're not going to continue to get opportunities to have a conversation with the principal, right? You're going to get suspended. You're going to get all of these other consequences. And so with that in mind, I need you to like really think about that. Fast forward, she's a senior this year. And so she came back to visit the school, and she ran the whole conversation, okay? Like she was having a whole conversation, and I was just so grateful for the fact that like, I know she's older, but the idea that like she, was excited. She graduated early in December and was thinking about going to Vol State. Once again, very smart student, but behavior got in the way of some of those things. And something she told me, she was like, I was able to stay not necessarily out of trouble all the time, but you constantly reminded me that the world does not look like this, and no one's going to tolerate the behaviors that I've exhibited. And so I constantly remember that in my mind. So I have a very loud voice. And so students know that when they get to high school, I want you to remember when you try to skip in the classroom, me yelling that like, get yourself together. Like, you're not supposed to be in the restroom. And so that's just an example of like, I don't need to continue to yell necessarily, but I want everyone to hear that like, these are the values, these are the actions that we have to do in order for us to be successful. And like, that's just an example of like a student who had a hard time in middle school. Like, there's evidence when you pour into kids beyond the classroom. And I didn't do a ton, right? I just did a ton of talking and a ton of hold of her accountable for her behaviors that then pours into them like over time. And so there's a good amount of stories in even that founding class that students who are at MTSU who were like, when they came here, the counselor was like, oh, I can't believe they're sitting down and they're in college. And so, and that's one of the students went to Brentwood Academy. So it's just like so many like stories that when you invest in children, they will do well. And I think we have that autonomy to do the investment. But once again, I feel like I give 110% to children, because at the end of the day, I want staff and students to know that like I gave my all. And that's what's important in this work.
Talk about how the community can invest. You talk about investing in the students. How can the community invest in Strive Collegiate Academy?
Time, for sure. So we have students who come who are not at grade level. We have a good amount of students who are two grade levels, 3 grade levels behind. And so definitely like just time to, and it's typically in reading, sometimes in math, but just like time to come and sit with students so that they're able to like not only read to them, I don't want the adults to read to them, but students reading to them and then sharing that information to them, or just even a mentor, like having someone where a neutral person that's, not home, not school, that they're able to like look up to or just have conversations with. And so just really time, because this is a very formidable time for students, middle school. And so just having adults who are doing really great things as examples. So I would say like time. And then we take students on field lessons. We try to take every single year, we take students to visit a college, a local college. And then at the end of the year, we take students on field trips outside of the city. And so if people ever want to like support that experience, because in my mind, it's not like we do a ton within the building, but it's also the exposure outside of the building that is valuable to our students. And so being able to support those ventures will be beneficial too, just to make sure that, kids are getting that exposure.
Absolutely. Wrap up with contact information. So website, social media, phone number, where do we go to learn more and get involved?
Yeah. So you can go to strivecollegiate.org, which is our website. On there, you should be able to access. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have LinkedIn, and we're constantly weekly sharing the great things that are happening at Strive. You can contact us at our phone line, which is 615-645-6440, a lot of fours and fives. And then lastly, hello@Strive, if you ever want to just like find out how you can get involved. So hello@strivecollegiate.org. So exciting.
That makes it easy. LaKendra Butler, founder, executive director of Strive Collegiate Academy. Thank you for all you and your amazing team do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the City Current Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.